Welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm Kathleen Walter. With us now is Congressman Steve King, Republican from Iowa, a member of the Small Business, Agriculture, and Judiciary Committees. And Representative King, as always, it's great to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
Great to be with you again, Kathleen.
At a Senate Intelligence Committee hearing in March, Director of National Intelligence James Clapper was asked if the NSA collects data at all on millions of Americans. Clapper responded no, saying basically the NSA is not allowed to track Americans and isn't going to. Should lawmakers investigate Mr. Clapper for misleading Congress?
Well, we need to take a good look at it and drill into it quickly and more deeply than we are. I think he said not advertently, or some words to that effect, and as if this dragnet is somehow inadvertent or accidental. And of course it's not. I was involved in the debate and the deliberations on the Patriot Act. The language that I recall in that discussion was that if you were a foreign-to-foreign communication, you had no expectation of privacy or constitutional protection from the United States, even though there might be a U.S. nexus or hub. And if you were foreign to domestic, same rule applied. But domestic to domestic, let's just say U.S. citizen to U.S. citizen inside the boundaries of the United States, to have the potential and maybe even the reality that the federal government has collected all of the telephone data, not the voice, but the origin and the destination of the call, the time and the duration of the call. You can put together a lot of patterns that way, and no American is anonymous in their activities if we're going to let this apply. When you broaden it and see that now they have the PRISM program that's capable of tracking our internet activity. They photograph the front and the back of every letter that gets mailed in the U.S. Postal Service. We can go on and on about the intrusion into the private lives or the potential. And even if all of that was sealed up within NSA so that it didn't ever get out to be anything other than the national security application of it with the search engine through it, we can no longer trust that because we see the Obama administration has used the IRS to target its political opponents.
Jim Sensenbrenner, the Republican author of the Patriot Act, says the PRISM surveillance system goes too far. He says President Obama is falsely claiming that the Patriot Act authorizes NSA surveillance and the agency's activities are an abuse of the law. What do you make of Sensenbrenner's claim that the president is abusing the Patriot Act?
I agree with the former chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Jim Sensenbrenner. Of course, I worked with him on that committee now into the 11th year. His legal analysis is very, very sound in every instance that I can think of. And I haven't gone back to review the technicalities of the language in Section 215 of the Patriot Act. But I know that Jim Sensenbrenner was a principal author, and I will be reviewing that later on today. I agree with him on what he said, and I think I'll be able to come out and publicly support that once I read the language.
What safeguards are in place to ensure that the Patriot Act isn't abused by the government? And will Republican lawmakers push for more congressional oversight of these programs to ensure that American civil liberties aren't being violated?
I think we must. We're going to have to review this. We're going to have serious hearings to bring out these cases. I know that one of the things that I've said in the past is that show me where someone has had their civil liberties violated by the Patriot Act, and the response that I got was, well, we won't know. Well, now we're starting to know. And the breadth of this is beyond the imagination that, well, just 10 years ago we didn't have this capability. When the Patriot Act was drafted in the aftermath of September 11, 2001, we didn't have the capabilities that we have today. We didn't have that massive terabyte of storage or the software capability to do what's being done. We need to go back and review all of this. And I will tell you, one of the questions that we need to ask is, are we more in danger because of the threat from the physical threat from our enemies from without or even within, say Al-Qaeda that I think is in the United States to a certain degree today? Are we more threat there, or is there more threat to our lives and our livelihood because of the intrusive nature of this government? How much of our activities are curtailed or inhibited because of the threat of an IRS audit or perhaps a government wiretap? How many people have decided they're just going to hunker down and stay out of activism? And what happens to the political center of America if we let that happen? I think it's a huge danger to us. We're going to have to examine all of this and reassess it.
Let's chat for a second about Edward Snowden, who revealed the National Security Agency's intelligence system, PRISM, the wide-ranging secret court order demanding Verizon give the NSA the phone records of millions of Americans. He's being hailed as both a traitor and a hero. What, in your view, should happen to him? And he was last seen in Hong Kong, but is now MIA. Are you concerned he'll share secrets with China or the Russians?
Well, I hadn't really thought about that very deeply. I don't know what his motives are. He had signed a confidentiality agreement as a private contractor working for our government. I believe by law he's bound by that, and if we don't hold him to that oath and to that commitment, then anyone can reveal government secrets anytime with a level of impunity, and that pledge and that oath won't mean anything. That's very important when we take an oath for our confidentiality, especially in highly classified. On the other hand, there you can have Edward Snowden being wrong and potentially committing a crime, and that to be adjudicated perhaps later. At the same time, he may well have provided a service for us so that now we know what's going on, and now Congress can actually address it. And I'd go further, that some of the criticism has come to Congress and said that we're lazy, we don't go into the classified briefings, and so therefore it's true that all of us were not informed of the PRISM program, including myself. But the piece that's being missed is this. Members of Congress routinely go into classified briefings. Yes, we leave our BlackBerries outside and we're bound by confidentiality on what we hear in there, but we are not always told the truth by this administration, and we're not always told the whole truth. So what they tell us is what they choose to tell us, even in a classified setting. If you don't know the right question to ask, if you don't already have the information, you're not going to know the right questions to ask. So let me say Edward Snowden has delivered something here that causes us to put focus on these policies, and when I think to some degree we've been snowed by the federal government and the executive branch of government.
The House Judiciary Committee, of which you are a member, is investigating whether Attorney General Eric Holder perjured himself before Congress in relation to probes involving the AP and Fox's James Rosen. Can you update us on what's next for the investigation?
Well, I know that the Judiciary Committee staff is digging into this and putting the pieces together so that they can compare under oath statements to under oath statements. And I just a number of times questioned Attorney General Holder myself. And here is the pattern from this: the cabinet members that have come before me and the committees that I sit on. I cannot think of a cabinet member that's testified before a committee that I'm on whose intent it was to inform Congress. Instead, they've taken the posture that they're going to endure the testimony and the questions from Congress rather than inform us. That's been Eric Holder's posture. How many times has he said, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know? And the times that he's been forthcoming and tried to inform us, I think have been relatively rare. I want to get the facts in my hands before I would make an allegation more broadly than this, but it's our obligation to have this oversight. We need to take a look at it. If we're not getting the straight truth from anyone who testifies under oath, it's our job to bring it forward. By the way, we found Eric Holder in contempt of Congress, and the directive from that was for a U.S. attorney to bring charges. Of course, the U.S. attorney works for Eric Holder, and so they've declined to do so, and now we're in civil court litigation to try to get an order. But this is something that goes deep and it's broad, and I think it's going to be difficult for Eric Holder to maintain his position as Attorney General for the duration of the Obama campaign or the Obama administration.
Let's turn to immigration real quickly. Recently, the House passed your amendment to end the Department of Homeland Security's policy that allows it to delay deportations of young undocumented immigrants and others. What can you tell us about the amendment?
Well, the president, and through not executive order specifically, but I will call it executive edict, has delivered executive amnesty by his directive from John Napolitano and John Morton, who is the head of ICE. There are about 6 Morton memos, we refer to them, that prohibit ICE from doing its job inside the United States, that grant executive amnesty. It isn't just the dreamers. These are people that are up to age 31 that allege that they came into the United States before their 16th birthday. It isn't just those who were brought in by their parents. It's people who came in on their own. And it also includes some who came in with drugs on their back walking across the Arizona desert. This is a blanket amnesty plan that has been an executive edict. The bottom line is the executive branch has the authority to have prosecutorial discretion to decide in individual cases only who they will apply the law against, because they can't possibly prosecute everyone. But this administration has created 4 classes of people and exempted them from the enforcement of immigration law and manufactured a work permit for them out of thin air. All of that is unconstitutional. It's been found generally to be the case by the Northern District of Texas in a decision off of Judge Reed O'Connor, who in the case of Crane versus Napolitano, that's the case that I'm supporting with my amendment to cut off the funding to implement this executive amnesty. And you can look at it from a constitutional perspective, the president's violation of the Constitution and his own oath of office. You can look at it from a policy perspective and understand that it isn't just kids. This is people that are 31 and younger, and every year that goes by, those folks get a little older, and there's a broader class of people that are exempted in an unconstitutional and a lawless fashion by the president and the people who do his bidding in the executive branch.
Last question for you, Representative King. The Senate votes today on whether to bring bipartisan immigration legislation to the floor there. Could the Senate legislation pass the House?
In its present form, I don't think so. Here is what I'm concerned about. I don't want to see the House move any piece of immigration reform, any piece of immigration legislation, because it becomes potentially the vehicle that could be messaged to the Senate, and then there could be appointed a conference committee that could bring a Senate amnesty bill to the conference committee, along with, let's just say, perhaps if the House passed a border security bill, which the one that has passed out of the Homeland Security Committee is very, very weak. If they pass an E-Verify mandatory bill, if they pass an ag workers or a guest worker bill, any combination of those, 1, 2, or 3, or 4 bills that might pass out of the House could become the conferenceable vehicles. And if they attached, say, a House enforcement piece to a Senate amnesty piece and sent that conference report to the House, it would be unamendable. If the Speaker chose to bring it up, every Democrat would vote for it, and it'd only take 12.5 Republicans to vote yes, and amnesty would be on its way to the president's desk. For that reason, I think this House would be unwise to move legislation, and because especially anything that has to do with enforcement is not going to be followed through on. It didn't happen from '86 on when the promise was enforcement. That was the Honorable Ronald Reagan who wanted to enforce immigration law. This is Barack Obama, who has defied immigration law, his own oath of office, and there are some, let's say there are some Republicans in the House and the Senate that believe that they can do business with him, and I can't for the life of me understand how they could be sincere about that, given the activities of the president in immigration in past years.
All right, Representative Steve King, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Kathleen.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.